Hello everyone, welcome back. So in this session today we are going to see the TypeScript concept, that is how to export or import your classes, methods, or you call it as functions, and also the variables or the class members. Okay, so this is a bit different than the normal automation testing, but then because we are moving towards a lot of automation tools that involves the JavaScript and TypeScript, and then it involves a lot of modularizing your test cases or maybe writing lots of utility methods so that it can stay as an isolated and then you can call, and then which can be used across your project rather than just repeating the same task or the same variable or the test data time to time in the entire framework. So that is why it is important to understand the export and import module actually. So the export or import, it could be like you are utilizing a third-party library or some npm package, or let's say that you have written your own the methods or the utility methods that you want to bring it to your test cases. Okay, and this is helpful for your the automation testing and also the unit testing or API testing, any kind of testing where you're writing the test cases. So for this actually, let's first create a basic class concept actually into the TypeScript, and this is again similar to your JavaScript as well. So irrespective of whether you are using the TypeScript or JavaScript, this session will be helpful for you. So think about I'm writing a calculator application. So think about I'm writing a welcome code actually. So let's say that I will just say that welcome.ts, some file actually I'm writing. Now here I want to just greet someone or else display some certain text. So what I would do that I will just create a welcome, and then I'm just always make sure that any classes that you are using, make sure that it is same as the file so that it would be easily understandable, or else even you can have multiple classes as well. Okay, so I'm creating a class welcome, and inside this I will be creating a method. So let's say that I will say display message. Okay, some method I'm just writing, and this is the way I'm writing a method. And let's say that this will return a string actually here. So let's say I'm just writing something and I will just make it as like this. Okay, now when I'm saying this dot text, there has to be a class member, right? This is normal oops concept. So I will be writing like I will be taking string. I'll just create this. Okay, now in this case what I'm going to do, how does this will print actually this one? So from where actually this message will come? Let's say that I want to take this text from an external source, or maybe from your test case, or maybe some test data that I want to really take it. Either I can just add it into this, or maybe let's say that I will be writing a simple constructor. Now how do I write? It's just the constructor, you can write it. There is no method name you need to provide, and let's say that it accepts the string message whatever I want to print it. Okay, so in this case, now here I will be just saying that this dot text, which is nothing but my class variable, equal to text. Now this text is nothing but the text that I am accepting into the constructor, and this dot text is always refers to my class level variable. Okay, fine. Now this class is there, but see, I don't want to really execute this particular class here itself. I want to access this particular class methods or whatever the variables from outside actually. Now for this, in JavaScript or TypeScript, there is something called an export actually. So you need to export this one, and you need to say that export default. Okay, default, and then the name of that particular class. That's it. Now you just need to specify this much. How do I access it? So now let's say that I have another text file or maybe a test file. So it is welcome test. Let's say that I'm just giving like this and ts file, and here I want to access that particular class. How do I do that? Now if I'm exporting anything, then I have to import something, as simple as that. Now let's use the import keyword and give some name. Now let's say that I'm just giving the same name only, import the welcome from certain source, right? I mean from where I want to get this particular keyword. Now if I put a dot slash, you can see first thing is that when you put a dot slash, See, I'm inside this TS folder. Okay, when I'm putting a dot slash, it always refers to the current directory. Now in my current directory there is only one file, that is welcome.ts. Now I'm choosing that. We'll see what happens if it is into a different folder or directory, but let's just focus into this. Now let's say that I want to just console.log so that we can see at the output. How do I access? Now welcome is my keyword where I can access all of these things, right? So now here what I'm going to do, I'll create a variable. Let's say that let welcome, small letter, equal to, I'll say new welcome. Now new welcome, why am I doing that? Because I have to pass something into the constructor. Now let's say that I'm passing this particular string. How do I access it now? So I'll say welcome. Now this is the object. See, this is not really a kind of what you call some attribute or something. It is the object. If I put dot, you can see there are two things it is displaying. The display message is the method, and from where it is coming? It is coming from welcome.display message. So that is something from here it is coming. Now when I'm doing a new welcome, what it does, this particular message goes to the constructor actually here. Okay, if I just specify this much, actually let's say that I'm just specifying this one. Now this is my default constructor actually. Okay, but when I'm mentioning like this, it is my parameterized constructor. Now I will say display message and just a method, that's it. Okay, how do I run it now? Now before you are running this kind of things, whenever you are importing any module, you might get some error as module not found. In that case, what you can do, you can go to your tsconfig.json or your jsconfig.json. Okay, don't worry about this content. This is actually for one of the automation tool that I'm specifying. But then what you can do, you can create one ts or jsconfig.json. Under the compiler options, you can just copy paste this many things. Okay, so this will resolve couple of what you call interdependencies. Fine. Okay, so if you have done that, now let's see how do I run this. Now for this, let me open my command prompt and I have to go to the ts folder. That is the location where all of my files are present. Now what is my test file? That is welcome test. I mean, which one I want to run? I want to run this one. Now what you can do, you can use this npx command, and this appears if you have installed your npm package or the node.js. Okay, it's very easy to install. Just go to Google and install that utility, npx, and then you have to say ts node. Okay, ts node, and then you have to specify the file name. See, my file name is into this directory only, so directly I can run like this. Okay, now run it, and you can see that it printed whatever you are expecting, the console log. Okay, so what this does, first it is importing whatever files it is required, then it is creating a parameterized constructor to pass the string, and then it is. So that is how the import is working here. Okay, so this is actually class specific. Like if you have a class and then you have certain methods and members are nothing but it can be variables, it can be methods. So all these things you can really do. Now if you see, there is something called as export default actually. Now what happens whenever I'm specifying like this, right? This particular statement will be only once across your file. Okay, it means that if I'm specifying across export welcome, then I can even export something else also. So there is no issue. But when I'm using the default keyword, it means that it has to be only one statement only. Now here what I can do, instead of welcome, I can give something else as well. Now let's see if that works fine or not. Now if I do this and then I will take this. Okay, now see, this variable would remain same only. Now if you just go here and put a dot, you can see the same variables you can, the same members you can see, and if you run it, it should execute without fail. And you can see that. So it is very optional to give any name. Okay, it just resolves automatically. Why am I giving a different name? Because there is only one default exporting feature here. Okay, there is only one class or one entity that I'm defaultly exporting from here. That is why I can give any name. Or if you avoid the confusion, I always make sure that I give the exact name so that it would make sense to everyone whoever is looking into your code. Fine. And here let's make like this. Okay, fine. Now that is one of the way you can export the class and the members. There is another way. Instead of this particular statement, right, like I don't want to do like this, somebody will say that I don't want to even write like this. But what you can do, you can even do another way. Here itself you can say that export default class welcome. This will also work. There is no other change. You just remove, I mean, if you are adding the export default, don't add it at the end again. Now let's see if this really works. I will run the same test. And you can see that it works fine. So this is another way of exporting that one. Now this is actually when you are inside a class, actually, like let's say that I'm just talking again from the QA standpoint. Let's say that you are writing some like what you call page object model, actually. So where you have all these pages, and this has couple of like if I go here, or maybe here, like you can see there are certain methods, there are certain variables, all these things you can put it there. Fine. Okay. So now let's see that is it always mandatory that each file will have a class to have your methods and the variables as exported, or if you want to use it in some other file? Not really, actually. So you don't really need to mention the class, and also it can be any variable or objects as well. So it is not always that you need to only export the types only. You can export even the objects, the variables, whatever it is there. Okay, now let me show you that without having the class. Now for this, what I'm going to do, I will be writing a default utility, or let's say that some kind of utility that I'm writing, which would help you to kind of understand more. So I'm just right clicking here, creating a new file. Let's say that I will say calculate. Okay, a simple calc util I'm taking, and then this would contain, let's say that 3 different methods actually here. Okay, and I'm writing that here. Now here you can see that I have 3 different methods. One is add, subtract and multiply. This is very simple. It just accepts numbers, and you can see that this typing is very much optional because I didn't select the strict keyword here. So that's why it throws the warning, but it works as well. Okay, fine. So 3 methods are there, and you can see that these 2 are very much understandable, right? I just mentioned as function and then subtract. And here, because inside this class I'm specifying these methods, when I'm giving a like a opening and closing bracket, it would consider as method. You can see the class methods. So when I'm writing here, I think even it accepts without the method as well. Let's see. Okay, I think it won't accept that, so you have to specify function. So if you see that this is actually a very different method or different way actually I've specified here. So the thing is that there are 2 ways you can specify the methods or functions, you call it. One is you can give the function keyword and then as usual a method or function name. There is another something called as using arrow function actually. So this is called as a arrow function. Now you can see that here constant add. Now this looks like a constant or an object or a variable that I've created, right? So you're right. So there is an object I've created. Now I'm saying that this object equals to means it gives me what kind of parameter that I need to specify here. Okay, so this would be an object which will hold all these things, or maybe I will say like this. Okay, so some anonymous function that I am assigning to this particular constant. Okay, now let's say that this is my the function name, and if you see this is kind of a reverse order actually. So here you will give the parameter first, then you give an arrow, okay, and then after that you will give like as usual. So this is nothing but very similar to your this one actually here, just that you need to understand this first line is similar to this entire first line. Okay, after that you can just write any kind of block of code that you want to do. Okay, fine then. And then it can return something, it cannot return something. But because I'm using these things for certain purpose, like I will be calling and utilizing that, I have to return something. Fine. Now the next question comes that how do I really export these things to a different, let's say that I have a new file and I will say that calc_test.ts. Let's say that I want to test this particular application, okay, or this particular utility. How do I really access it here? Now one concept we have seen here actually, which is we are exporting actually the class itself. Now the same thing, can we do that? Yes. So we can use the same export keyword and we can do that. For an instance, I will just write an export keyword and here also export, and then it is done here. Okay, now here how do I export? The same thing, just write export here and you are done with that. Now all these three particular methods can be accessible in different other files. Okay, now let's say that I want to keep it as a default. Okay, even though you can do that, because there is, as I said, there is only one entity that can be as a default exported, so that's why. But then let's say that I want to create another export default, it won't accept that. It will throw that you cannot have duplicate function implementation, it has to be only one. Okay, now how do I export it or import it actually? So here import, and then I will say that now there are a couple of methods are there, right? I can say star, actually star means I will be importing everything, but normally we don't really have this star actually, because what happens when you execute your code base, whether you use all these methods or not, but everything will be coming or building it up, which is not a good practice. It might impact your performance. That's why it is always suggested to add the stuff that you want to import actually from there. Now let's say that I want to take the add. Now add entity, see at this moment this could be like a variable or an object or even a class or even a method also. From where actually? So / and calcutil, that's it. Now how do I use this? Console.log, this is my add, right? Now this add is what actually? It's a method actually, right? So I can directly say like this, so add 23,34, like this I can do that. Now let's say that I want to even accept the multiply, let's say that. Now this is my default, right? So because this is default, I don't really need to keep it inside this. I can even give like this as well, or I can give even like this multi. Why I can give any name, you know? The reason is that there is only one default export is there. Now let's see if this really works fine or not. So I'll just copy paste this one, and instead of that I will specify multi, and let's say that I just want to multiply this one. Now let's see if this really works or not. So to run this one, and even let's try the arrow function also, which we created. Now that is subtract, right? Now see this subtract, when you added it, it auto intelligently added this one to here. I did not add it explicitly, so that is again another benefit of that. Okay, so I'm subtracting this one. Now let's run this. Now this is actually my calc test, right? Calc test, and you can see that it executed everything, all these methods whatever we have written it. So like this you can do it. So there is no difference actually the way that you are accessing these things into your what you call test files or into a separate file. Okay, now at the same time, now these are all methods, right? Like different methods that you are like writing here. Now let's say that what about the objects? Let's say that I want to send a tuple, or I want to send an array, or like some strings. Let's say that I have a constant actually that I have here. Let's say that I want to share one URL actually to everywhere. So I can just say that I'm just writing a URL here, and let's say that const, and I will say that browser name equal to, I'll just say Chrome, something I'm writing here. Now these two things also I want to share it across my project. Again just write export actually here and export, that's it. See, you cannot make it as a default again, because there has to be one default only, irrespective of whether it is a method class or an object, there has to be only one export default. I can remove it from here and I can add it here. There is no problem with that. Okay, so there has to be only one. Normally I've seen that when there are actually like these combinations, right, nobody really write the default actually, unless you want to give a different name there. So that's why I always make it as simple export. And you see that here it is throwing an error because you are giving multi. There is no multi exist in this. That's why. So I'm just keeping it as a default so that this particular test will not throw any errors. Okay, now how do I access it? Again, it's a simple way actually. Now let me just write something here and I will say browser name, and you can see that automatically it intelligent that. And then let's say that the second one was URL, right, and you can see it is coming here. So it means that you don't really need to remember to import it. It automatically imports everything there. Okay, and if I run this test, it should work. And you can see that browser name and the URL, everything is appearing here. So that is the different ways you can really export these things. You just need to understand actually what things we can, the syntaxes of exporting. And there is another way also. Let me show you one thing. Let's say that I don't want to export like this individually. I want to just write like this. Let's say that. Okay, so this is another way. So depending on different ways people are writing, I'm just showcasing all those stuff there. So there are two different what do you call, your constants are there, right? Let's say that I want to have like multiple objects I want to export at the same time. No problem. What you can do like this. You can write here and then the browser name. You can even do this way also, and your test should work as usual. Okay, yeah, so there is another way actually in this class. Let's say that let me go back to this class actually. See, sometimes what happens, you can even specify like this, right? Now think about a way actually where you are creating an object right here, like you can see here, new welcome and something. Now let's say that I have a method actually, I have a class which is not having any kind of constructor actually here. So think about, I'm just writing, I'm copy pasting this one, copy and then paste it here, and then just rename it to welcome 1 TS. Okay, and then here I'll just write welcome 1 and I'll just keep it like this, and there is nothing here. Let's say that, and here it returns directly from here. Let's say that I'm accepting this text, and then it just returns that text. That's it. Some simple concept I'm writing. I'm not really doing a lot here. See, if I write like this, what you need to do, you need to come back to your test and you need to make it as a new welcome 1, right? Always you need to write here. If there is no parameterized constructor, the best way what we can do is that you can mention like this also. Okay, now in this case what happens, it reduces one line of code here. I'll show you that. So let's say that I want to, even you can import multiple also, there is no problem with that, and this should come from welcome 1. Okay, now here what I can do, so I can just write like this, and I think it is even, so here you will say just welcome 1, and if you put dot, you can see that, and inside that something you need to print. Let's say I want to print the welcome 1, and then if you run this test, welcome test, right, it should work absolutely fine. There is no problem. You can see that it printed. So it is just reducing one line of code actually, because already the object is created and also it is exported. So that is one of the thing you need to keep it in mind. And there is another way also that I wanted to quickly inform that before we wrap up. See here, if you see that all these things, browser name, URL, everything I'm specifying here, there is even another way is there, that is something called as, let's say that let browser, I'm just writing something equal to, I can even do a require actually. So this is again another way of doing that. So if you see that this comes from the calc util, right? So I'm keeping like this here, and I can remove actually. So instead of this, I can directly specify this browser actually. I can do even this way also. So just a second, I will keep it like this. So this is okay, but I can specify this one dot console log, and I will say that browser. Okay, so this way also it should work. Now one benefit of doing this let browser equal to require, right? See, always the import is actually very much recommended from TypeScript or JS, okay, because it is very much native. I think when you write like this require statement, right, it indirectly goes back to your import statement only. But one benefit that I have seen by doing this is that you can write it anywhere in your code actually. Import statements are always at the top, but when you do the require, you can write it anywhere in your code actually. Now let's see if this works fine or not. And this is my calc test, right? Okay, you know what, it is coming the entire one actually, because see, you see that everything it is coming. But if I write here browser dot, and you can see that when you put browser dot browser name, it just gives the name. See, before I just the entire object, entire set actually, because this requirements, this calc util, whatever it is there, everything it printed as an what do you call, as an object. So from here you can get anything that you want. So add is a method, subtract is a method. These two are actually the variables or objects, and then there is a default multiply function. And then if you say browser dot browser name, it comes here like this. For some reason it has to be auto intelligence actually. I don't know why it is not coming, but then yeah, that is how it should work actually. So browser name you can specify like this. Okay, so these are the different ways you can export and import different ways and different what do you call, entities in TypeScript or JavaScript. Hope this session is helpful whether you are doing a unit test or automation test. So stay tuned and do subscribe to this YouTube channel, because we will be seeing some more interesting topics in upcoming days. Thank you for watching.